Can Ash Tyrants survive Monster Hunter? Another God of War creature graces this franchise once again, and we will be doing ogres, and then we will be wrapping it up with the drakes. Or I might do the drakes first because their video is just like almost ready compared to the ogres. So whichever one comes out first. With that being said, here the Ash Tyrants are very simple. They're essentially just fire-breathing dragons from the God of War franchise. Like they are probably the ones that fit the most naturally in Monster Hunter compared to the others, even though all these creatures can technically work in Monster Hunter because, diversity is probably one of the best things in Monster Hunter when it comes to like creatures and even people. But with that being said, considering we don't know how the Ash Tyrants pretty much function or even breed, we're gonna just keep them, I guess you say, kind of like the Corpse Eaters, where males will hold a certain territory, mate with a female, the female will lay her eggs within that territory, and she'll raise them with the male checking in every now and then. Now, considering where the Ash Tyrant was, it does have its own, like, I guess you could say somewhat food source or somewhat locale. Now, when we find the Ash Tyrant, it is in a semi area where it's on the higher lands, but it's also surrounded by water-like areas. And again, some of the things I do think it could have eaten that would have been satisfying to it would definitely have been the Berserker or the Berserker mother, which is, pretty hefty and pretty interesting male. Then there were the Grims as well, which are, I guess, bite size compared to the Berserkers, but again, still food nevertheless at the end of the day here. And again, this is kind of me like speculating on what the Ash Tyrant would eat, but considering we do know that drakes and corpse eaters will eat the local wildlife and even some of the top tier predators, I don't even think it would be impossible to even say that the Ash Tyrant would be able to eat these creatures and even the likes of the Dreki as well. But this would probably be like a rare occasion, considering Drekis are able to retreat into like deeper waters. But again, they would definitely be no match for an Ash Tyrant, even if they managed to get a grip on it. So with that being said here, yeah, we had the Ash Tyrant. We are gonna do the same thing with the Corpse Eaters and the Wolvers. We're going to put it at an apex level so we can keep everything simple. And, well, yeah, let's talk about it. Considering the Ash Tyrant's environment, I definitely think it would function more on coastal and semi-highland-like regions. Considering the realm we find it in is Svartalfheim, which is basically a, well, I wouldn't say a tropical place, but I definitely say it's more like a lagoon locale, if anything, which is actually a pretty interesting location for, a dragon in general. But again, at the end of the day, it's still pretty interesting. There are also like mountainous regions here, which I find interesting for like, doors just climbing over mountains. But again, it's just funny to me. And again, the area we fight the Ash Tyrant in, you could actually see there are like mountainous regions, a little bit of forest-like areas here. So with that being said, in the Monster Hunter world, I do think it would probably function in, forest, highland like areas, areas that have a mixture between forest and mountains and like that. Now you might be asking, well, what about, deserts and gorges? No, because these guys don't really appear anywhere else. It's very possible they actually do like the areas of Svartalfheim, even though Svartalfheim's lagoons are a bit more hot spring like than anything. So it is very possible that they could likely, be in some desert environments, maybe some like areas where forest and deserts like connect. Now you might say, what, legendary, what do you mean? Well, if you guys actually look at Monster Hunter environment, the environments do connect on a certain level, or at least in certain areas. But in terms of food here, some of the highland areas do have things like Baruku, which is basically like a giant bison, if you will. And these guys are pretty much prey for things like Rathalos, Torticles, and etc. And then we also have the Irrup as well, which, shouldn't be a problem, especially when it comes to like highland areas and stuff like that. These guys are basically the excuse me. These guys are basically the Kelbies of the region, or Kelbies of any highland areas. Now, as for like actual Kelbie itself, I don't see those guys really being, too too satisfying. I mean, Nargacuja hunts them, but then again, it also kills multiple of them, meaning that it does have to use things like surplus killing in order to really get its, what is the word I'm looking for? Daily fill. However, in terms of like environments, or at least, lower level forest like areas that are close to the highlands, I could definitely see a preying upon the likes of Aptonoth, and for the more hot spring or aquatic or coastal like areas, I can definitely see Slagtoth being preyed upon as well. These would actually be a lot more satisfying for a creature of this magnitude, and believe it or not, I think it would actually be pretty interesting and pretty great to actually see an Ash Tyrant actually have to go down to these water-like areas, and that will probably how it be discovered, by actually hunting. And keep in mind as well, the Ash Tyrants do have their fire breath, meaning that they could honestly be seen somewhat similar to a Rathalos in probably terms of hunting technique. But now as for more, I guess you could say, bigger or stronger monsters that they would eat, obviously the raptorial bird wyverns are going to be a casualty. They are eaten by everyone and everything else. I mean, we've seen Astalos literally kill Great Roggy and a great I think Baggy or Great Drone or a Gaia Drone or whatever. So yeah, they'll definitely be easy to eat as always. And then we have some of the other creatures, such as the fanged beasts of the ape lineage, like Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl may be due to its breeding habits, because they do go on top of trees and actually entertain mates, which is how Rathian actually gets them. Bishitens are very interesting, but again, if they do go into the higher lands or higher mountain ranges of their areas that they pretty much inhabit to actually get food, then the Ash Tyrant is definitely going to take one. Congalala may actually be the safest one, because it does kind of reside in the more lower depths of the forest-like areas. But again, going up into like higher areas or maybe even some coastal areas, Congalala and Congo would definitely get snatched up. Malfestio could also be a prey item, but again, considering it does reside in deeper forests, I don't see it really, being eaten all like that. Bomboro. Yeah, your invasive self is definitely getting eaten. I can definitely see an Ash Tyrant like dive bombing a Bombero like from the air, and just Clampy gets talons on its back while its jaws pretty much just rain down fire upon it. Palumo as well. Now you might say, wait, you're saying the Coral Highlands could be available as well? Yeah, I do think the Coral Highlands also could fit the Ash Tyrant because of its high altitude and mountainous like areas and stuff like that. It could definitely be like a comfort thing rather than a much more, okay, I could definitely see it happening. But again, I definitely think it would be more like comfort than anything for the Ash Tyrant to be in a Coral Highlands. Next off, we do have Duramboros, and while we are putting at the apex tier, Duramboros isn't really a prey animal I would really go for, even if the Ash Tyrant is on the same level as the other apex monsters. Still a formidable creature at the end of the day. Basarios, definitely a rare occasion, but again, if it does appear on the more coastal-like areas, maybe some in the mountainous regions as well, considering the fact that it does need to camouflage itself until a certain while, Ash Tyrants would definitely eat it. And then we have the amphibians. Now, considering, again, these guys are more aquatic creatures, definitely would belong in the more coastal, spring-like areas that the Ash Tyrants would definitely hunt from Svartalfheim. Then Tetranodon and Tetsukabra would definitely be in there. And if they ever appear in more locale areas that are pretty much close to like Springfields and stuff like that, I could definitely see some Zamtriosis or maybe a different Zamtrios type of subspecies, considering they do have to cross the sea at some point, I believe, then yeah, they would definitely be snatched up. So it seems like the Ash Tyrant does have a decent food source or a decent prey selection list, eating some of these larger monsters and even some of the smaller ones. And again, because of its habits, it would definitely live around the more coastal-like areas, or even some, open lands, I should definitely say as well. I almost forgot about that, considering the arena itself does kind of show a bit more. But when it comes to like competition, this is probably going to be two different ways here, considering the Ash Tyrant does pretty much function in open lands and mountains, and even some coastal areas likely. This means that the first characters or the first creatures that would honestly be on its, rivalry list would definitely be the Leviathans. So things like Mizutsune, Baruga Guru, and, Legiocris, Almadron, Royal Ludroth, and I think that's pretty much it for right now. Oh, Duna as well, excuse me, would all be creatures that would actually pose a threat to an Ash Tyrant. Now, this is pretty interesting considering we do know how most of the Leviathans do function and how they do have a competition with larger monsters and even monsters that, in all honesty, should be able to physically overpower them, but yet they're able to utilize their skill, strength, and weaponry to actually just overcome that strength difference. Because again, look at how Ufduna pretty much just does Rathalos. Straight up grabs it midair and just body slams it, where Rathalos' poison talents being the only reason why Ufduna gets off of it. And believe it or not, I do think one of the main competitors for a lot of the coastal prey animals would definitely be Lagiacrus and Royal Ludroth. Royal Ludroth especially would likely have to deal with Ash Tyrants because, again, regular Ludroth are seen as prey animals to other monsters. This would even include an Ash Tyrant. So they would likely have no qualms about snatching up a Ludroth and everything. And then Lagiacrus, kind of the same situation with Rathalos, except Ash Tyrants would be more frequent around coastal-like areas because, again, it's an environment that they're familiar with and the environment that they're comfortable with. And even lagoon-like areas that have, like, multiple ponds and stuff like that or multiple watering sites, yeah, I could definitely see Royal Ludroth and Ash Tyrants likely clashing frequently over, territory, over, I guess you could say, food and stuff like that. And again, Royal Ludroths having to defend their harem probably more frequently from Ash Tyrants. Meaning that Royal Ludroth may actually have to evolve and change itself a little bit. Maybe get a bit stronger, or maybe it'll find a way to actually counter the Ash Tyrants in general. Now, Mizutsune definitely could be seen as a prey item, especially in the more coastal-like areas. But again, it has every means to get away from an Ash Tyrant. This could actually be just another rivalry like with Zinogre. Zinogre likely predates on Mizutsune, and so Mizutsune, utilizing its agility, speed, and overall grappling skills, as well as its bubble ability, is able to pretty much put up a fight against Zinogre and even likely disrupt his connection to its Fulgur bugs, which again is not good. Then we have Almudron. Almudron is likely the safest from Ash Tyrants on this list. And the only reason why is because it's more of a mud-based creature, meaning it wouldn't really share the same locales as the other Leviathans too much. We know Mizutsune and maybe even Lagiacrus, because Lagiacrus does go inland, would likely compete with Almudron. However, Almudron is also a desert-dwelling creature, and it would likely just not be around the areas that an Ash Tyrant would need. So, with the coast pretty much done here, we would then have to focus on the more highland areas. So, these predators are basically mostly going to be flying in general. So, to start off, Torticles, the original ruler of the highland areas, along with Rathalos, Rathian, and Flaming Espinas, right? Torticles is actually pretty interesting because it does hold the thunder element, which is normally known to counteract monsters with, well, fire-based attacks. But we don't know the Ash Tyrant's actual weakness, other than the fact that it can just, its attacks are basically more vulnerable, or it is more vulnerable when its throat is glowing. But again, I don't think the monsters really have that much of an intelligence to actually be like, oh yeah, let's target the big glowing throat thing right there and just, disrupt his fire. So yeah, Torticles would definitely be competition for him, and I definitely think it might be his most common competition, considering Torticles does go after Rathalos and Rathian. Now, both of these two are very interesting. And especially Rathalos will likely be the main competitor. But the thing about it is, Rathians, honestly, would likely not mess with an Ash Tyrant. They're not Apexes, or at least not in the same class as Apexes, unfortunately. And if you guys are wondering why, I made a full video about it. But again, Rathian will likely nest on more cave and lower altitudes to keep away from Ash Tyrants, so that there really isn't any competition other than just for food. Meanwhile, Rathalos would be the aggressor in terms of any other confrontation with a Ash Tyrant. Seragios and Astalos as well. I don't think, there will be any ifs, ands, or buts about it. Seragios is a menace and Astalos is a crash out. So what are you going to do about that? But overall, do I think Ash Tyrants can actually live and thrive successfully in the Monster Hunter world? Yes, I do think they I think they do. Now, compared to the other two, like the Wolvers and the Corpse Eaters, I think the Corpse Eaters likely do the best because, again, the Rotten Veil is available and they can just honestly gorge themselves to their heart's content. But then again, they could also go after Weak and Prey and wait for seasonal occasions where Downloaders do die. Meanwhile, Ash Tyrants would basically just be like any other Flying Wyvern in the verse and likely just be pretty much chill in all honesty. But yeah, Ash Tyrants do survive in Monster Hunter. Please comment down below, like and subscribe and share with your friends, and I'll see you guys later for the next video. Peace.